Scotland is the first country to provide free sanitary products. India removed tax on sanitary products in 2017, while Sri Lanka has 52% tax on sanitary napkins. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of MUGSHOT. Today we have a very special guest. She's the founder of Sisterhood Initiative Sri Lanka. Okay, so thank you, Nabeela, for doing this. Before we start, right, I just want to let you know that I'm a big fan of what you do, and it's amazing how you're standing up for what you believe. I think, especially in Sri Lanka, we need more women to stand up for what they believe. And you definitely have a lot of supporters out there, and I'm one of those supporters. I'm a big fan of your work, and good luck to you. Let's start with Sisterhood Initiative. So tell us about Sisterhood Initiative.
So basically, just like of the textbook, our mission is to create safe spaces for women to have discussions. So we have curated discussions, we have like an experience exchange. And the idea of this is for women to sort of come out of their shells and talk about things and also learn from other people and add some sort of value into their lives and form this sense of community with each other. So that's just a textbook definition of what we do and what we stand for.
So, what motivated you to start Sisterhood Initiative?
Okay, so this is a bit of a long story, but I'll just try to like go with it soon, right? So
Yeah, sure,
when
no worries.
Okay, so when I left school, I joined this group of 20 young individuals from all around the island, from everywhere. We were really diverse. And we went around the island to every district and we did workshops in peace and reconciliation, right? And in all three languages. So when we were doing that towards the end, we were in Vilpattu when we sort of took a break there. And I was with my mentor who like trained us towards this whole experience. And she was just telling me about how important it is for every community to understand that even inside the community that there are differences. And she told me, when you go back, try to have this intra-faith discussion. So when you go back to your Muslim community, try to have Muslims talking to themselves because this happens everywhere, right? You think a community is homogeneous or like they are one way, but they're actually not. Especially in Sri Lanka, we have so many races within the Muslim community. We have Boras, we have Memans, we have Moors, and we have different cultural practices and different ways of looking at things. So that was sort of the main idea of why we wanted to try something out like this. But unfortunately, in 2017, I remember I pitched this idea to one of my male colleagues who was very influential. And he just straight off the bat turned me down and he said, this is not something you as a girl need to be involved in because, you're just a girl. Like, I don't think you will be able to do this. It's not going to go a long way. Let the men figure this out. And I remember getting really discouraged at that time because I was fairly young. Then I waited, I guess, 3 years for a bit of self-esteem to match up. And in 2020, what happened was actually last year, in December, there was this event for Muslim youth, and it was sort of publicized on social media. And I saw the panel that was involved in the discussion, and it was all male. So it was also a very progressive topic. And even for that kind of a topic, I was wondering why the panel had to be all male. I mean, like, we have influential Muslim women and very smart Muslim women who can speak about these topics. So I was a little, I guess, emotional, I'll admit. And I sort of ranted about it on Instagram and about like a lot of Muslim women wrote back to me and said that they would love to learn more about all the different kinds of problems that Muslim people face in the country. Then I finished my exams and I wrote back to each one of them. Then about 100 women joined our WhatsApp group. So I think that was sort of the turning point where we realized, okay, there is a lot of women who want to make a difference. Then we organized our first meeting in Colombo and we had over 30 women turn up, and we had a real learning experience there. We shared experiences. We had Miss Hassana Segu Isadeen. She's an advocate for Muslim women in the MMDA, like Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act reforms. And she just sort of gave this story of how and what other lives that Muslim women have in Sri Lanka. And after that, when we had that event, it sort of like snowballed. There were some girls in Kandy who could not come to the Colombo event. So when they saw us doing this, I think it was on social media that they saw. And also girls talk a lot, right? The girls from Kandy said, "Can you come to Kandy?" And I said, "Okay, we'll try." And then after January, when we had the Colombo event, first week of February, we just quickly, just paid it from our own pockets and went there. And they had sort of arranged the whole thing for us. They had got a school auditorium for us, and it was so humbling, such an humbling experience to be there. And it was for some of the girls the first time that they're meeting different Muslims, non-Muslims, because we have non-Muslims working with us in our core group, or like our organizing committee group, right? So it was sort of like a first time experience for all of us to be engaged in something like that. And I want to just mention this, right? So we have like discussion points and we have topics that we talk about. And I thought some topics might, because they are taboo, girls might not want to talk about them, and that we might have to wrap up soon and come home. What happened was we got late to our trains, which ended up coming in bus, because the girls just wanted to keep talking. And that's when it hit me. It's just that until then, no one has bothered to really give a woman the platform to actually speak. Like up till then, she has felt so restrained that her opinion has not been mattered, that she felt like she didn't have to voice it out. And it was then that I realized, oh my God, I've volunteered so much, I've done this, done that. But I don't think I have personally contributed much back to my own community. And I think that experience is really like when I went back home, it really hit me hard. Um, I don't know if I just went off topic, but that's in general what our initiative has done so far. So prior to COVID, before it hit, we had a legit uh, line of work that we wanted to do and workshops that we wanted to hit. But unfortunately, we have to like rearrange a lot of them and have a lot of them online. So we've had like 3 sessions online, and we want to have more coming up in the future. So yeah.
Okay, that's a very long story, but I think that does make a lot of sense. That does make a lot of sense, given the fact that, especially the Sri Lankan Muslim women don't speak about it a lot. But yeah, that's a very beautiful thing to do. Okay, so how long since you all started? Was it this year or last year?
I guess you could say it's this year. I think we're
This
really
year.
young. Like we've just done two. I can't even call them events, but just two workshops, and just Colombo and Candy. And we actually had a lot of things planned, but I think they sort of will have to be rearranged. So yeah, but there's a
So
lot of moment.
how often do you have your workshop?
So our initial plan was to have a meeting every month in Colombo, like that to happen like as a constant thing. So every Monday, every month, we have a meeting in Colombo, but that was affected through COVID. And also, what we do is we visit outstation areas, like regional areas. We call them regional workshops. If they request us to come, for example, Candy asked us to come, so we went. And for now, Akurana has called us, Gampala has called us, and Saint Mardu has called us, and also Gaul. So we sort of go where they call us, because we don't want to barge in and say, "Hey, let's have a conversation." That's not what I have learned so far as a volunteer. So we like to go where it's necessary.
Although you mentioned there are non-Muslims who are involved in Sisterhood Initiative, right? But Sisterhood Initiative is a community for Muslim women to understand and address issues they face. So there are comments that this portrays bad image about Muslim men, and due to the whole discrimination against Muslims in Sri Lanka right now, people might use this against Muslims as well. So, what's your say on this?
That's a very interesting question, and also, I think we'll have to answer it very strategically and point by point, right? So, the first part about portraying men in a negative way, I don't agree with that because I don't think all Muslim men fall under the category of what's going wrong with the system, right? The problem is the law that we are following, our personal law, clearly when you look at it, it benefits one gender and it's not the females, right? Because of that, there have been many abuses that the males have done which have gone unnoticed because the system doesn't really help. So it's a little biased against women. It doesn't really protect women. So sometimes men can do sort of whatever they want. And they prefer it that way also, and they don't want to change it because it helps them. It gives them a sense of control. You can keep the patriarchal system, you can keep women in their place, sort of, right? So I don't think all Muslim men are bad and it portrays men negatively because the idea of what we do is we go and we have a conversation, right? So we go and say, what is it like to be a Muslim woman in this century right now? What is your identity as a girl? This is exactly what we did in Candy. We broke it down and we said, okay, because you're a girl, what are the things you go through? Because you're a Muslim, what are the things you go through? Because you're a Muslim girl, what are the things you go through? And what helps you become a Sri Lankan Muslim? Like, what does that identity help you in? Then we sort of do this awareness on the MMDA and the problems we have with it. Because some of the things, not some, a lot of the things in the current law that have not been changed are actually really horrible. Like if you hear some of the stories, like I couldn't stomach some of them. I had to leave the room because it was just too much, right? So I would not necessarily say it's portraying men negatively. I think it's not protecting women enough, and it's sort of letting the wrongdoers go off easily without really punishing them. The second layer to your question is, I think you mentioned the current discrimination and the situation in the country, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? When we talk about discrimination, we have to understand where it's coming from because a lot of it is hate speech and so on, right? Usually, some kind of discrimination comes from a stereotype that a community has made of another community. So we have a Muslim communities in Sri Lanka, we have our stereotype. They have formed a negative stereotype of us and they push that agenda saying it's wrong, it shouldn't be here, we are not helping society. So what are those stereotypes or negative stereotypes? That we don't contribute to the country, we don't contribute to the identity, we don't really care about other communities, we only care about ourselves, we are overpopulating the country, we treat our women really horribly. So those are the narratives that other people create about us. Last year, when Easter attacks happened, that was a turning point for our community to not take the blame for it, but say out loud, there are some things that our community is doing right now that is not good in the long run. We need to change those things. For example, our education, whatever our syllabuses are in the madrasas, need to be revised. We need to know what people are teaching about our religion, if it's extreme values, things like that. We need to know that our women are protected from the law. Women need to be able to sign their own marriage certificate. You can't allow a woman below 18 years old to be married, right? So things like that we have to revise. But what a lot of people want is, or what's easier for them is to say, oh, we don't have anything wrong with us. We don't want to fix anything. We'll put everything under a blanket and we'll point our fingers off at someone else. That doesn't really help us at all in the long run. Because what happens is, at whose cost are we doing all of that, right? It's actually again the Muslim woman who has to go through all of this because she really does not have her voice in these decision making situations or even opinion hearing out or listening situations. For example, if I asked you, I'm not to put you in the spot or anything, the minimum age of marriage for a Muslim woman, what would you come up with?
I think I would say 18.
For a Muslim woman in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, 18, but I think it's 16 if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so good try. But actually, even I mean, I also learned this really recently, so I'm not going to like shame you or anything. But the truth is, we don't have a specific age limit placed in the law for just us, right? So what it says is, even for a girl younger than 12 years old, if she wants to be married, she can be married with the permission of a Qazi court judge, right? So a Qazi court judge can be anyone. There are two conditions to be a Qazi court judge. You need to be a male, not a female, a male and of good character. But it doesn't state what good character means. So you can have sometimes really good Qazi court judges or really horrible and random Qazi court judges who are just some shop owners, a peon, or some sort of administrative staff. So eventually, what happens is, you have really bad statistics of women being married off at 12, 16, they don't finish their school. So we have these problems in our community. And what other people see us as is that we like to follow our own thing regardless of what other people in Sri Lanka want to do, which is not a really good energy to give off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
So
So,
I was going to
so
say,
are you saying that there are marriages that happen? Because I honestly thought it was age 16 in Sri Lanka for Muslims, but
yeah.
I wasn't aware that below 16 marriage was acceptable at this point. But okay, that's new to me.
Yeah, so the technically what the law says is that the age limit is like 12, but even less than 12, you can be married with the permission of a judge, which means before girls even hit puberty, they can be married off. And here's the thing, the woman does not sign her marriage paper, okay? Which means the father signs it for you. Which means I could be living over here right now. My dad could be in Candy and marrying me off to someone right now without my knowledge because my consent is not explicitly needed. And the next thing is registration of a marriage in Muslim law is not compulsory, which means you don't even have to have a documentation of my marriage, right? So these are very dangerous to women. So you know what happens in the practical situation, because these are laws made in a room, right? But when you come to the real world, in the grassroots, what happens is women are marrying random men and they're having so many wives and they don't come back and support them even when they have children, and they'll just leave, or the next day they'll get a divorce, they won't pay alimony. So these are the real problems that Muslim women have to face. And then when they are beaten or when they are abused, when they come to Qazi court judges, guess who is reviewing their case? Not a woman, it's a panel of men that they have to keep repeating their sexual abuse to. That's so traumatic. Can you imagine what that must feel like? Right? So there was this lady once, her husband had burnt her thigh while she was cooking something. So when she went to the judge, she explained the story, and the judge said, "Okay, if he actually burnt you, raise your cloth up to your thigh and show us the mark." And she did. Then the judges said, "Okay, if you did not have the shame to cover yourself and not show us the mark, then probably you deserved it."
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
And she did not
Okay.
get a real verdict there. So that's what I'm saying. So we are sort of disconnected where we make the law and where the law applies and how women actually get compensation or some kind of justice. So I'll just give you a bit of a statistic. In the Eastern Province in 2015, 22% of the registrations, right? So these are the ones that were recorded. There are unrecorded marriages also. The 22% of the registrations were of women below 18 years of age, right? Now, our country, Sri Lanka, we are party and we have ratified conventions like CEDAW and CRC. That's Commission for the, sorry, Convention of the Elimination of Domestic Abuse Against Women. I hope I'm saying that right. And Convention of the Rights of the Child. These conventions all state that women and children have to be protected. So child marriages is a complete no. But in our country, Muslim community children and women are clearly not helped through this, because our personal law is saying we can do all of these things. So child marriages happen. Women, even if they're abused, the police sometimes don't want to deal with it because they say, "Oh, you all have a Muslim law, you all figure it out," right? So only through the Prevention of Domestic Violence Act can they actually get some sort of justice. That means even our personal law is not helping our women when they're abused. So those are real problems, right? Um, so for me, when I heard this for the first time, I was just thinking it's almost as if we have purposely, in the whole of Sri Lanka, we have like an unequal citizen community, and that is the female Muslim community, because they don't even have the basic rights that a woman who is Buddhist or who is Sinhalese or Tamil or Christian is going through, because we have different laws that are applicable to us. Yeah, and the last thing I'd say is now, when you talk about now, you must be in Malaysia, right?
Yeah, I'm working here.
Oh, okay. So in Malaysia, you have Qazi courts, and there are women who are judges, right? In Sri Lanka, Qazi court judges can only be male. And if you remember, a few years back, we had a chief justice who was female. So, which means the Qazi judge position is the only position, administrative and judicial, that is biased on gender, that discriminates on gender, and that belongs to our community. And that does not send a good message, right? So, this is a good time for us to have this conversation as a community, because I think last year we had a wake up call almost, because we were sort of held on to at gunpoint and told to admit that there's something wrong with the system. But still, what people would like to prefer and what they prefer is to sort of sweep it under the rug and say that we don't really have a problem, and that's really dangerous to the woman because she's the one who gets affected. So, yeah.
Okay, that's I think that's a lot to digest right now because I wasn't aware Sri Lanka was
Sorry.
going through all this. I wasn't aware that Sri Lanka was going through all this, honestly. And I'm from Eastern Province myself, so when you told me
Okay.
the statistic about Eastern Province, okay, that's kind of shocking. So do
You'd
you
be
get?
you'd be, you'd be
Yeah,
surprised though. Like it's not the Eastern Province, right? Even Slave Island has statistics equal to Eastern Province. So it's not an Eastern Province problem either. Even in Colombo, there are girls 14 years old, 12 years old who are getting married. So it's actually all over that we have this problem. So yeah.
so do you get hate comments for your work, the work you're doing?
Well, that's interesting you asked me that, because I also get positive comments from men. Like, for example, before we went to Candy, we had to be really careful because this year, Ratana Hamuduruo put a bill to the parliament saying all the customary laws have to be repealed. That means Candian law, Muslim personal law, Tesavalmi law, all have to be repealed. Right? Now that puts this situation in a bit of a mix, because now we want reforms in the law, but someone is saying let's take it off altogether and everyone do the same thing. Now that means we have to act fast, right? So when we were going to Candy, we were just going for like a discussion based thing. We had to be really careful because we are entering a zone where, prior to us there was a group of people who wanted to have a similar discussion, and they had to cancel their event due to some pressures. So we had to be really quiet about what we were doing. We had to be a little safe, I guess. But we managed because we weren't doing anything hardcore, and we came back. There were so many men who wanted to be a part of the conversation. So many Maulavis spoke to me, called me and asked, "Hey, can we come? What are you all talking about? Can you all have a recording and show it to us?" And it's not to sort of put us down or put us into trouble. They genuinely want to be involved because they say, "Oh my God, yeah, we totally agree with you. Women are going through this. Our people in the community are going through this, and we want to be a part of the conversation." So it's really nice to see men also wanting to be involved, which is why we are a little upset due to COVID, because we wanted to have a men engagement and sort of have an event with men. but those plans sort of came crumbling down. But for hate messages, of course, we get a lot of them, and mostly because it's my face that sort of goes around. People do call me, and when you look at me, I think people make personal judgments as well, and you sort of have to let them go. But in general, I think we sort of like to focus on the positives of the feedback we get.
So when you're getting a hate comment, right, how do you face it?
It's really difficult. Now, I thought I was really good at doing that, like dodging the bullet. So, what happened was, like years ago, when I would talk about controversial topics like the national anthem and this and that, people would say things to me, but I would sort of let it go, right? Because you see, I go to a state university, and I always tell people, in a state university, you never know what's going to happen next. Like physical violence is a thing. It's a reality. It happens, and I remember once a group of friends and we sort of over like we say nulemberuna, like we were like almost in trouble, but we just sort of got away from it. So I think that experience has really taught me that whatever I get online, virtual hate is actually really like a super covered thing to do. Like it doesn't really show any bravery, so it doesn't really bother me as such. But I have a few weeks ago, what happened was I was I think talking about something, and I was just making a few jokes on my social, like on my Instagram platform. And this girl completely took me out of context, and she went public with it, and she was telling me how I need to be a better Muslim, and she was attacking me sort of personally. I don't think that she understood that she was attacking me. She thought that she was advising me, which, I mean, you don't randomly go up to a stranger just because she has a public profile and tell her things to do. I mean, that it's not like really polite to do that. But then she sort of made this public poll for people to comment and submit entries as to why they hate me. So it was
Wow.
like a bunch of 25, like a group of 25 Muslim men saying all the things they don't like about me, how I dress, how I do this, how I talk. Like it was really personal at one point, and I thought, oh my god, this is not good at all. And yeah, that happened like last week, and I was just like, oh god, I don't know what's. Maybe this is just a test, like Ramadan gives you tests, and this is probably one of those. So I think I am all right. It doesn't really shake me off as such, but I think I'll have to get ready. And all of us in general will have to get ready for a lot of things coming up in the future.
I personally believe that no matter what you do, it's going to be always a group of people that is always going to put you down. So I don't really think that you should be considering these people and taking these people seriously, and you should be doing what you believe is right. Okay, now talking about you as a person, right? So I have been watching your Insta stories. To be honest, you have a great sense of humor and all that. So, what's your background, and what do you do apart from Sisterhood Initiative?
So I'm an undergraduate at the University of Sri Lanka. I study environmental science, and it's a it's not what I really want to be doing, but I'm doing it, so I'm not complaining at the moment. I think where this whole thing started was I used to volunteer like crazy in school because I hated to stay at home because I think home was like really pressurizing. I have two academics for parents, so I didn't really like to stay at home. I'd rather be out in school doing extracurricular activities. So I have a bit of privilege and a bit of relaxation over there. So I think with volunteering, I just sort of started to learn different experiences and started to learn about different people and their realities. I think that sort of like really got me to like tell people stories or just tell my story, like what it feels like to listen to theirs and that sort of thing. Um, I think a lot of the experiences I've got, like I said, with traveling the country, and also I worked for the Sri Lanka Girl Guides. Currently, I'm working for them as well, actually volunteering for them. We don't get paid for any of the work we do. We've been working for like 2.5 years on revising a handbook for the senior girl guides, and we've made it more proactive. and help them really be leaders, like what we really want a girl to be in our society. So we've changed the entire curriculum and we're sort of trying to get that out of there. And that has sort of like spearheaded like different opportunities at the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. And it's a lot of experiences that I like working for, and you get a lot of pleasure out of it. You were asking me about like what I do and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think you also asked me like how the Instagram account came to be. I remember I was in Hong Kong for a competition. It was sort of a very stressful, strenuous, hectic competition. And I remember I got a high fever, but I didn't realize I had a high fever until I came back to Colombo, right? And I remember I was in the washroom and I was just like, oh my God, I think I'm gonna faint. And and we had to get ready for this gala event and we had to like dress up and put on makeup and stuff. And I thought I'll just narrate this whole experience of me putting on makeup, and that's when my makeup tutorial started. And that's why people were just like, oh my God, you're so funny. But then I was like, no, I'm not funny. It's just that I had a really bad temperature. Like I had a really high temperature. That's why I was probably funny. And then when I came back to Sri Lanka, I just continued doing like really weird and really honest tutorials or just honest conversations, and that just translated to just being really honest with topics, like difficult topics, because I think when people get together and have tough conversations, you start change. Like that's how you start it. Like you have to be able to sit down and you can disagree with each other, but you need to be able to like have some sort of, where you agree in one point and you disagree somewhere else, and you have to have some sort of like engagement. And I, for some reason, I'm not good at it, but I love getting better at it, and I love staying curious. So that sort of helps me do my other volunteering work as well. Yeah.
Scotland is the first country to provide free sanitary products, right? And
Yeah.
Sri Lanka has 52% tax on sanitary napkins. So, do you think is it because of lack of women in Sri Lankan politics?
It might. I mean, obviously, I think having more women will help for to lobby for issues that women need, because I don't think men anyway understand what we go through. But more than that, I don't. I just think the lawmakers have not understood that necessary items like sanitary products, those are essential products, right? Like you can't survive without them, but they classify them as luxury goods. That's what the problem is. So it's a battle to make the lawmakers understand that, because if it's not a luxury good, it won't be taxed as high. So that is where the confusion point is when it comes to the legal aspect. But definitely, if we have more women in politics, obviously it will be more helpful. But right now, putting a lot of women into politics, we can't guarantee that they will always want to work for women, because as soon as a woman is entered into a male-dominated uh, working atmosphere, they sort of play the rules there, like they sort of try to fit in and work like a man almost. And until there's like enough numbers and enough quality, it will take some time to gradually evolve there, and then women can start to lobby for our rights and work our needs into the law. But until that, but we have to start now. We have to put in. We have to enter women into politics more, because the representation isn't enough, like you mentioned.
When it comes to leadership and leading, right? So I think mostly in South Asian countries, women don't tend to step up and lead, especially when it comes to politics, unless they have a family background in politics. What do you think can be done in order to change so that women can lead the show?
So this is really interesting, because we had a webinar on this recently from Sisterhood Initiative, and one of my friends, Nabeela, she really just gave us a clear-cut view of how this works. So whenever we speak about South Asian women, we quickly go to Sirima Bandaranaike, madam, where we say, "Oh, she was the world's first prime minister, and she's from Sri Lanka, right?" But then when you look closely, she had a lot of privilege connected to her. She got prime minister. She was able to get her position because her husband was assassinated. Same goes for Madam Chandrika Kumaratunga, right? So in Sri Lanka, for a woman to get a place, historically she has to sort of have a lot of privilege and connections and influence. That means a normal, ordinary woman might not be able to do that. Same for the men as well. I'm not saying they can't do it without it, but for women, the society sort of expects an unrealistic standard for her to be elected or even run in the first place. She needs to have a degree, she needs to have children, she needs to be an excellent person to balance everything. She has to treat her husband really well. She has to have zero black marks on her profile. She has to be educated, she has to be able to talk well. Whereas for a man, they'd probably just only check if he has the economic benefits, and also if he has committed any crimes in the past or something like that. But for a woman, they look at everything else, and whenever a woman makes a mistake in politics, they sort of said, "Oh, we already gave women a chance, but they have messed it up. Therefore, we don't need women anymore in politics." Whereas if we look at the men that we have running parliament, they keep making mistakes, but we never put that standard on them. So there's a clear double standard and a bias that we have against women. How we can change that is, I think, first of all, we have to encourage women to be decision makers in lower levels. For example, in university, right, Sizan? So a lot of local universities, because of the culture and the violence and things like that, it's always a man or a guy who will be union president. It's never a woman. A girl will always be secretary or take down the minutes. So we have to change it from that grassroots level. Like if we start making changes there, and if we start showing women as being human beings who can actually make decisions for a large group of people, that's where we can start the change. That's what I personally believe, and that's the way to go through it.
Education is very important. However, in the Muslim community, women are being married while still studying, which forces them to stop the education. How do you think women can change the world if they're not getting the education they need?
If women don't have those same opportunities for education,
Yeah,
is it?
yeah,
It's going to set them back. That's why, for especially Muslim women in Sri Lanka, if women don't, if women don't if we don't encourage them to study, and if we just ask them if they, or if we force them to get married early, I mean, we're clearly depriving them of the opportunities as another man or another girl of a different faith to achieving what she potentially can, right? There's an interesting statistic. For example, my friend in law faculty, um, in her law faculty class, there are about eight there the proportions are so wild that it's like 80% girls and the remaining is the boys in the class, right? But when you enter law firms or any kind of law culture, it's always dominated by men, if you understand the legal scene, right? Which
yeah.
is also worrying, because sometimes it means also the girls are studying, but somehow when they leave, they get cut out, even at the job opportunity or the working opportunity. She's discriminated on because she's having a family, or if she's pregnant, so she can't carry on further. So there are discriminations happening there as well. So true, not educating is not helpful at all. But sometimes, even with education, the girl can still face a lot of discrimination, even at the workplace and decision making place.
Do you think there is enough being done through the Sri Lankan education system regarding women empowerment?
Honestly, the Sri Lankan education system is really behind. I'm not saying we need to adopt a Western approach and a Western education system, because even if you look at Western countries like America, you can understand that education system isn't working either. What we need to create is a system where we are not spoon feeding children, but we challenge children to learn and to go in search of knowledge or pursue knowledge and make them understand that it's not a competition to get more marks. You can all win together, but it's that quality and that strive you have when you do something, right? Now, I'll just give you an example. So, for about 2.5 years at the Girl Guides, we have been revising that handbook, right? That handbook is so old and never revised that there was a question saying, can you write a telegram to a friend? I mean, in 2020, nobody has even seen a telegram, right? So some of the syllabuses and some of the curriculum that we see are so outdated. They don't apply to this generation because it's written by people of a much senior age and different kind of qualifications. They're not adapted to the child. It doesn't spark creativity or anything like that. So what we did with our handbook is we completely called it a toolkit. We removed the handbook name. We put challenges, so everything is a challenge. We learn about reproductive health, which is something we don't see in the current education system. We don't talk about things because it's a taboo, or even if it's printed, certain schools will avoid teaching it because they don't want to be accountable for teaching things like that, right? But we included in our toolkit things on reproductive health, contraceptives, because our age group for girls is 18 plus. So we need these girls to know these things before they enter the real world, right? And we put in things like civic duty, like how do you vote? How do you select a potential voting candidate? Can you run for elections? Then how would you prepare for it? Things like that. How do you take care of your environment? What are the laws that apply to you? If something goes wrong, if you experience some sort of assault or harassment, how do you take care of yourself and how do you seek justice for yourself? So we have very practical questions and we have those sort of approaches, and we encourage the girl to go in search of the knowledge, and then we tell her at the end of it, now you have understood everything, can you try to do a community project where you have learned all the principles in the previous months, and you apply it and you teach someone else about it, or you create some sort of community change. So that's where real leadership is, because then there's an activity that directly links to what you learned, which is not what we learn in Sri Lanka. We just memorize or we remember things, the practical points or what the page of a textbook looks like, but we don't really get an opportunity to apply it in the real life. And unfortunately, it carries on even to university, because you can't break a habit like memorization. Once you get it, it's in your system, you will keep doing it and you won't really understand what you're learning, which is a huge problem that we face in our current system.
Thank you for your time in the first place. And I think I learned a thing or two today for sure.
Oh, thanks. I'm really sorry if I just rushed in. I think I sort of got like a
No,
little
it was
brain.
perfect. I think that we learned a lot today, especially with the facts about what's happening in Sri Lanka and the sad reality about women and the problems they faced. So thank you for that. And to hear all these things that are happening in Sri Lanka is really heartbreaking, because when you look at Sri Lanka, most people think that, okay, it's one of the peaceful countries right now after our civil war, but then we do have a lot of issues within ourselves, within the community itself. And like you said, right now, most of the Muslim community, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to hide our mistakes so that the others don't discriminate us and, put the blame on us. But
And
thank
also,
you, thank you.
yeah, and also I think we need to learn a lot of things as well. I'm not going to entirely blame it on us and say that we are trying to hide it. Of course, we are trying to hide it. At the same time, I feel like we sort of don't really know of the realities of other people as well. So there's a bit of a disconnect. So yeah, of course, those things happen.
All right. Thank you, Nabeela, for your time. Good luck to all your projects and
Thank you so much,
with
Sizan.
with your sisterhood. Thank you. Thanks once again, Nabeela. We did, me personally, I did learn a lot about what's happening in Sri Lanka right now, especially within the Sri Lankan Muslim community. And good luck to Nabeela and Sisterhood Initiative for what they're doing, the amazing work they're doing. So that's it for this episode. There'll be more episodes coming soon, so do follow me and do let me know what do you all think. Thank you and so much love for you all. Take care.